Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Deku become a villain part 4. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video and also share this video with your friends. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. Izuku was a bit bummed when Shinso took a different train after the high school fair, but at least they had exchanged numbers and he could still walk with Ida. It felt different than usual, better. He was more relaxed around Ida despite still having a mountain of secrets to keep from the taller teen. His more concerning thoughts raised their ugly heads only as Izuku came back home alone. He had really screwed up talking about his quirk with the UA principal close enough to hear. There was still some time left until his normal training would start, but Izuku didn't want to wait and pulled out his phone, sending a secure message to Kurogiri. A portal opened in the basement gym less than a minute later. He exited the portal at his usual training room next to Kurogiri. Your father has not yet arrived, but I will fetch a training Nomu, Kurogiri said. No, I need to talk with dad. He is still in the medical room to check up on his condition. I can send you there. No, Izuku said. It's close and I don't want to bother you too much. You already helped dad and Tamura all day. As you wish. Izuku jogged out of the room and down a dark hallway and eventually into the familiar room where his father kept track of his health. He was just on a computer talking with Tamura apparently when Izuku entered. You're early, his father said. How was the fair? A lot happened and it wasn't all good, though I learned something about All Might too, Izuku said. His father stopped mid-motion while putting his collar on. His head turned, so his non-existent eyes were staring at Izuku. Izuku was poking the tips of his index fingers together and looking away. I may have talked with him and the principal of UA who now knows about my quirk. Well, that was a quick game over, Tamura snickered on the other side of the computer screen. Through the screen Izuku could see he was in the bar and Kurogiri was already there too. You should sit down and start from the beginning, his father said. Izuku quickly explained what had happened from Shinso to the tea moment with Nezu. What have I told you about carelessness? He asked after Izuku finished. You talked about your quirk to some of our worst enemies. I know. After he first got suspicious, I thought he could find out from quirk registries anyway. Yes, at that point talking about your quirk and holding on to your cover story was the right choice, but things would have never gotten to that point if you were more careful. Izuku didn't say anything, just held his head down. Feeling sorry he almost missed a quick motion and was a bit too late to dodge an air blast from his father. He doubled from an impact on his stomach. And it seems that wasn't the only time you were careless today. Remember to always be aware of your surroundings, even when being disciplined. He shot another blast that Izuku dodged this time. With 30 had to vault over an all too familiar hospital bed and the blast still hit his leg, drawing blood. The blasts were stronger than when his father first started this training. It hurt to land on the injured leg, but by the time Izuku got back his balance and checked the wound was gone. You are improving, but you cannot always rely on the regeneration to cover for your failures. As for your other actions today, they may not be all bad. We can turn this into our advantage. If All Might is going to teach at UA, it narrows down where he can be at any given time. We just need to know exactly where and when beforehand. It still wouldn't be easy. The UA has ridiculous security, Izuku said. Their main campus has, but teachers sometimes leave their school too. With UA there is finally an opportunity to monitor All Might for such opportunities, or you have one. Me? Izuku asked and stared at his father. As I understood, the principal of UA encouraged you to apply. Since he knows about your quirk, All Might will also know. They will likely try to contact or keep an eye on you as a potential threat, so why not make it easy for them? Izuku's eyes widened as he realized what his father was suggesting. How would you like to study in the UA Hero course? While Izuku was left speechless, the only sound came from the computer speakers as Tamura almost choked on his drink. If All Might is going to teach at UA, then the teachers and students are going to have closer access to him and his location than anyone else. It is a unique opportunity that one of us happens to be in the perfect position to exploit. It is not risk-free. They should already suspect a connection between us, though All Might most likely believes I am dead. But Izuku started. Are you going to doubt your ability to get in, or you oppose the idea? His father asked. Because you don't want to surrender to the system? The first is lunacy. You have defeated Nomus before, most other applicants will not stand a chance in the practical exam, and the written should not be an obstacle for a smart boy like you either. As for the other, infiltrating the hero society is not the same as surrendering to its values or people that wronged you. You might also get to face that Bakugo kid. Izuku tensed from the mere mention of the name, feeling a strange mixture of anger and fear. See, even his name alone still has power over you. That won't do. I could send Tamura to deal with him in your place, but that might not solve the issue. Sounds like a fun side mission, Tamura said. So, I don't have a choice, Izuku said, looking down. Of course you have, son. I have left everything in your life for you to choose so far. I am not about to begin with something this risky to you as well as us. If you are to have any hope of success, you must make the decision yourself. I'm not sure I'm ready to make it. I mean, I don't know what else to do in terms of school, but UA it just doesn't feel right, even if I go there only to spy. Not that there is anything special for me in any other schools. Except your friends, well at least the Ida kid. I doubt your newer friend is going to make it to the UA hero program without significant help. You could ask what his second choice for a school is if you aren't interested in infiltrating UA, though he might still get into the general studies. You are just using them to manipulate me, so I would do what you want. Izuku accused, facing his father directly with irritation creeping onto his face. Yes, his father admitted, though your help with spying on UA isn't the only thing I want. Ever since Inko died I have only seen you smiling or genuinely happy with Kurogiri or talking about Ida, and now, Shinso was it. I could hear it in your voice when you were talking about today's events, despite expecting to get disciplined. If they are going to UA, I can't think of a better school for you to go to, for however long it might last. Even if you plan to work with us in the shadows long term, you should still get a proper education. Go alone somewhere that might just be another Aldera, or stay with the only friends of his own age for more than a decade, while helping his father. The answer was obvious. Izuku knew about it long before his father stopped talking. He simply found it hard to say. Going to UA being taught by All Might. The thought was disgusting, but it was all to bring down All Might. I'll do it, but only if we help Shinso. I want him, and Ida around, if Bakugo is in the USA. Unless you want to risk introducing him to Inomu or Tamura, the training he needs will have to come from you. It might also be good for you to train with someone on a lower level, just so you don't kill someone when you don't intend to. Do you think I could do it? Izuku asked. Certainly, the way you analyze everything you probably have every fighting technique I've taught you memorized with their strengths and weaknesses. Izuku thought about the 3 notebooks he had on the topic and thought best not to comment. So, do we agree then? Yes, Izuku responded with more enthusiasm and started rubbing his chin. Shinso lives pretty far so it would have to be weekends. Can't ask Kurogiri. Ida could help with the training. I wonder if Shinso's parents would let him stay over. Mutter. Tamura, make sure the league is ready for a fight by the time next school year begins. Izuku will get us information. You need to be prepared to use it. Yes, sensei. Alright, Izuku snapped out of his muttering. I am supposed to spy on UA and All Might, but what are we trying to do with that information? And All Might, his father said in a chilling tone, possibly also take one for all, but end the symbol of peace either way. I made the mistake of allowing one for all to grow stronger before. I will not do it again even if the quirk is lost forever. But wasn't it your best chance to get healthy again? Izuku asked. It is one. With one for all's quirk enhancing abilities, my more delicate healing and transformation quirks might be able to restore my body as super regeneration would have if I had possessed it before my wounds healed naturally as well as they could. Unfortunately, the regeneration itself is too blunt of a tool for that now without risk. So, is there another way? Izuku asked. Yes, rapidly cut away every damaged part of my body and hope I won't die completely before the regeneration quirk can act. Unfortunately, much of that damage is on my head and lungs. The doctor estimated a 60 to 70% chance of survival with a proper surgical team. So, you need one for all, Izuku concluded, and even if we could take it that would require defeating All Might first. Tamura won't like me for saying this, but I doubt anyone or everyone in his league can do that. The quiet annoyed huff sounded from the speakers. All for one turned to look at the screen. Calm down, Tamura. You already knew this. That is what the Nomu are for. The doctor has worked hard to advance past the low tier ones that Izuku has trained with. Whatever pride Izuku felt over his performance in recent training sessions with the Nomus faded quite a bit with the reminder that they were low tier. He could never help his father defeat All Might himself as long as the only opponents he could barely fight weren't even thought of as middle class. You have only trained actively for half a year, his father said, as if he had read Izuku's thoughts. No matter how many quirks you stack up, the amount of time you have to master them will not change. You can have talent or train harder, but that can only help against experience or genetic modifications to a point. I guess. That said, you should get another quirk to keep pushing your limit. Maybe, but where? I don't want to just steal a quirk from someone, and I really can't. If someone just loses their quirk, anyone who knows about my quirk will suspect me. True. That does not apply with someone that will not be around to tell anyone. Izuku stared at his father as a cold shiver passed through his spine. Tamura muttered something. The rather reputable assassin did not take well to your brother's attempt to recruit him, and he tried to kill Tamura. Kurogiri had the presence of mind to capture him much like your kidnappers back then. The doctor is exploring his Nomu potential, but I believe his quirk would suit you well. Right now you lack reach. So, what kind of quirk is it? Izuku asked. It is called Hellfire Arrow, an excellent fit with your blades. Depending how you are able to manifest them, you might even present them as a single quirk. And the person was going to be a Nomu either way. If the operation is successful, otherwise he'll be dead. The doctor can compensate for a missing quirk with a replica, but it is better for you to take the original with your quirk. Kurogiri will take you if you ask. Even a mention of the Nomu made Izuku's lips twitch in a slight smile. I don't know how I survived without him. I wish I could pay him back. Pay back to a Nomu, Tamura said, and laughed once. Izuku stared at the computer screen annoyed. Sounds like you don't want him around. Maybe he should spend the rest of the day with me. Kurogiri, come here. The misty figure walked into a portal in the camera feed and stepped out next to Izuku. Tamura started where he had been and destroyed a bar stool. That is fine to me, their father said, make sure to train with him after getting your new quirk. I will come to the training room after I'm finished here. We will. Kurogiri wordlessly handed Izuku a bottle of lemonade. Thank you, Izuku responded with a new smile on his face, and sorry for ordering you. There is nothing to apologize for, young Shigaraki. Do you wish to go acquire your quirk now? I'd like us to go get it. Izuku relaxed as Kurogiri's mist covered him in darkness. Izuku was spending his Saturday morning training against the Nomus, now all three of his remaining kidnappers at once, while wearing his villain costume. He'd progressed enough to avoid or defend against their attacks most of the time without having to regenerate, but only caused scratches with his blades or local damage with his vibration. He had not gone for the brain since the one Nomu that died. He had been training harder than ever since agreeing to help his father by going to UA, but he still wasn't set on it. It didn't feel right, not after everything that had been done to him or everything he had chosen. Not to mention he would have to have All Might as his teacher. Going to school with Shinso and Ida was an attractive idea though. You aren't focused. His father shouted. Is this how you're going to fight when you face Bakugo? He's going to declare you worthless all over again. Is that what you want? Even if you manage to win like that with your quirks, that won't change your value without them. That won't prove people were wrong about quirkless people. Until you can beat him even without quirks, you haven't proved him wrong. Izuku didn't respond and blocked Nomu's punch with his flame shield. By the time he recovered from the momentum of the impact, he had already reformed it back to a blade. He jumped away just in time to avoid an air blast from his father. The bang as it hit the ground reminded him of Bakugo's explosions. His father had upped the amount of force he used again. Not good enough. People are going to come after you. I am already a widower, do you want to add a father of a dead child to that? Izuku sliced a Nomu's arm off and instead of going for a kill jumped away as another attacked. He was biting his teeth together, swearing he wouldn't let his father's taunting get to him. He knew what it was for, but that part of the training was something he didn't want to play along with, even if the Nomus's old appearances as his kidnappers flashed over them. Maybe I should have left you with the Bakugos since Inko raised such a weak child, or taken you with me years ago, before she taught you to be so soft. Did you ever even fight back when Bakugo came after you? I am sure he loved having a punching back that didn't even try to fight back, because that is what Inko made you. Izuku's eyes hardened. He vaulted over the attacking Nomu's arm and brought his palm to strike at its external brain as his vibration quirk activated at full power. Visible waves crossed the brain like when a stone fell on the water's surface, and as the first waves reached the skull, the whole thing exploded into a formless mass. The other two Nomus rushed at Izuku only for both of them to lose their hands to his blades. Soon after, those fiery weapons found themselves penetrating the Nomus's brains, no chance for regeneration. Izuku was left breathing hard in the middle of the three Nomu corpses, his dragon blade still active, but twisting and bending with his emotions until his eyes found his father and hardened. The blade straightened and stretched even longer and sharper than before. Izuku raised one of them at his father and started walking towards him. Leave mom out of this. She isn't some training tool you can drag out whenever you want to push me. No more. No, he answered. Izuku stared at him and took a step closer. As long as you can be influenced by those words, they are a weakness that can be used against you. Until you realize that, they might as well help raise the anger you need to surpass your limits in battle. You can find another way. She was a great mom, and I don't want her involved in this even if she's dead. I am not going to fight or, he stopped briefly to look at the Nomu corpses, killed because of her, not even Nomus. Even if you weren't with us, you should respect her memory at least that much. Izuku stopped a few steps from his father. Suddenly the man smiled so wide even his breathing mask couldn't hide it. Finally, I can feel it, a true threat, and you didn't even stutter. Not many would stand up to me, family or not. That I mean it. Leave mom out of it, or I'll let All Might know you are alive, Izuku said without any wavering in his voice. His father's smile disappeared instantly, his face tensed, and his hand squeezed into a fist. That's what I feel like when you attack mom, betrayed. They stood opposed to each other in silence for a long time. Slowly the smirk returned around father's mask followed by a chuckle, and eventually full-on laughter. Impressive, most impressive, you are truly my son. You went straight for effective threats and blackmailing using information you have gained. Very good. Fine, I won't talk about Inko during training anymore. Izuku still stared at him, confused by the rapid mood changes. He barely leaned away from an air blast directed at his face, but his father moved faster than he had ever seen and grabbed Izuku by his shirt before Izuku could evade. Izuku's feet left the ground. Never even suggest betraying us to the heroes, especially All Might. He held Izuku up for a moment in silence and then put him down gently. That wasn't very fatherly I guess, but there are some things I won't tolerate even from family. I wasn't really going to do it, Izuku said, not after all that he has done. I know, his father responded much calmer. I should congratulate you for your combat prowess. There is a not insignificant percentage of pro heroes who would lose against 3 Nomus. Though you were still unable to react to my attack. He said it, but the words lacked the bite it usually had when criticizing Izuku's performance. The training was over, and he was turning back from trainer to father. Izuku himself was calming down enough to notice the difference and consciously not look at the corpses. It wasn't just the realization he had killed the creatures that worried him, but it also felt good, like a weight had been lifted off him. Now there was nothing left of his kidnappers except bad memories, and that felt relieving. Part of him thought it was sick to feel that way, but he was still going to be happy to never see these Nomus again. Your goals might have grown, but we started this training, so you wouldn't endure that again, his father said with perfect timing. Izuku wouldn't have been surprised if the man had a mind-reading quirk. It is safe to say you have reached this goal. Try to put it behind you and focus on what is ahead. They stood in silence for a moment. So, Izuku started, do you think I am ready for UA? For the entrance exams, I'm more than ready. Have confidence in your skills. For your mission there however. There is at least one more test you need to pass, so we know you can do whatever the mission might require, one that the Nomus are not sufficient to provide. What test? You will see. Meanwhile, you should take pride in what you achieved here today, and without any broken bones. You have also impressed me with the other jobs you have done. Tamura might be unwilling to use your analysis, but your ability to see how to best utilize people he has recruited is impressive. He paused for a moment and grabbed Izuku's shoulder. You can spend the rest of the day with your friends. Try to enjoy yourself. Befriending likely future heroes may not be the wisest option, but as a father, I can't deny they have raised your mood more than anything since Inko. They accepted me for what I am, Izuku said quietly. Only part of it. Don't forget that, his father corrected. Being what is considered a villain is different. Even if they found out and didn't accept it, at least it would be for my choices, not for how I was born. I can live with that, I think. True, but that won't change how they would act if they knew, so try to keep the secrets you still have left, especially once you are around pro heroes at UA. You cannot spout out whatever you feel like the moment someone pushes the right buttons. Either you get angry and say something you shouldn't, or flood the room. Izuku evaded his father's eyeless gaze, embarrassed at the last comment. You should also realize the potential consequences of helping your friends enter UA. I know what it might mean eventually, but it is their dream, and if people see different quirks being used by great heroes, that might impact how they treat others with similar quirks. Even if they don't, every good person that doesn't get in is a spot that a Bakugo can take to become rich off a lucky quirk. Thinking so far ahead. I wish I could teach that to Tamura, his father said, and took his hand away. What are you still standing here for? You are going to be late. Izuku went to change from the black uniform to a regular long-sleeve shirt and loose pants he used for exercise. He had just finished when a portal appeared under the sweaty uniform he had piled on a table. Izuku turned to face Kurogiri. He was afraid of how the Nomu would react to the fate of the other 3 Nomus, but couldn't help but smile at his favorite Nomu teacher Guardian. Kurogiri handed him an ice-cold bottle of water. I heard you were able to defeat 3 of the training Nomus simultaneously. I am proud of your progress. The fear was gone, and Izuku stepped into the mist and appeared in his basement. Passing the hot pool, the thought of a bath was attractive, but he wasn't done sweating yet. He took a waiting backpack, got out, and started running across the city. Training, and even regeneration had greatly improved his stamina, but by the time he reached his destination, he was panting. His breathing sounded like a villain that had reminded him of his father in an old sci-fi movie he planned to watch with his friends. Hey. Izuku turned to face Shinso, walking calmly towards him carrying a backpack and an extra large cup of coffee. Hey, Izuku responded, it seems we got here before. Something whooshed past the two on the empty lot they stood in front of. Ida. One day, Shinso said. Unlikely, Izuku said, unless you know someone willing to loan me a speed quirk. Excluding the current company, Shinso sipped his coffee. I don't know many who would stay in the same room with either of us voluntarily, at least not without getting nervous. Izuku stepped through an open gate into the fenced-in empty lot and activated his dragon blades. People are fine with slicing and burning or deadly force in general, but being a threat to their quirker mind is too much. He turned to face Shinso, while forming both of his blades into shorter and thicker shields. He also turned down the heat as much as he could. Unfortunately, the entrance exams don't care about how we feel, especially with UA. Their robots are infamous. If you are finished with the coffee, let's see if the caffeine did you any good. You aren't going to get to those robots' weak points if you can't get good hits past my shields. Just let me get my gloves, Shinso responded, and pulled out thick blackened and charred boxing gloves from his backpack. Izuku picked up his water bottle in the meanwhile. He was still drinking when Shinso got his gloves on and charged. He thought he could catch Izuku by surprise. Izuku dodged out of the way of Shinso's first punch and blocked the other with a flaming shield on his free hand while still holding the bottle to his lips with the other. Can you at least pretend I'm giving you a challenge? Shinso whined. Sorry, Izuku said, but you're the one who attacked me while I was drinking. That was unsportsmanlike, Ida commented as he finally slowed down and joined his friends. If you want to get into UA you should forget that word, Izuku corrected and focused on Shinso. There is nothing wrong with striking when your enemy is distracted unless you underestimate them and strike carelessly. You were too slow and overextended your arm. I could have cut it off when I dodged. Those exam robots don't have blades probably, but they could break your bones if they get a good hit in, or if you get in their way when they are moving. So, more dodging training, Shinso said. Yep, Izuku confirmed. Has Ida gotten any better at accounting for his speed when holding back? Nope. He'd have to literally pull his arm back or stop at the last moment, Izuku said, and turned to look at Ida. There is not much point for you to be any faster in a battle until you can maneuver better. You'll just be a bull charging through the red cloth and into the wall of the arena. At worst you will hit someone at speed and kill them. The stupid entrance exam with robots won't account for that either. I understand that, though it shames me to admit I have not sufficiently addressed the issue before. Not surprising, Izuku said. Most of the time people only think about how to make their quirks stronger. Try not to hurt Shinso too badly. It's your turn to pay the bill if we need to take him to that quirk healer. Izuku pointed at a large sign of a medical clinic on the next building and lowered back into a fighting stance. At least you know how to hold back, Shinso said. Yes, well depends how I'm attacking you, Izuku said and blinked. I haven't yet shown you my newest trick. What trick? Shinso asked with narrowed eyes. Izuku focused on using 3 quirks at the same time. He held his hand partially open towards the ground near Shinso. The vibrating flames of his dragon blade twisted with the presence of the 3rd quirk, making them all look like one. Suddenly an arrow of flames left his palm, pulling some of the dragon blade's flames out with it for the same effect. In an instant the flaming arrow hit the ground behind Shinso with a flash, leaving behind black scorched ground. It doesn't really pierce through anything yet, but that might just be a matter of control like with the basic blade, Izuku said. It's still kind of hard just focusing enough to fire one off. You continue to impress us every week, Ida praised Izuku. Though you are correct, using this technique for Shinso's training would be unwise. Agreed. I'd rather get slapped around by Ida. My turn first. Izuku got back into a fighting stance and went straight for a punch. Shinso partially dodged, but Izuku still hit his arm. They spared like that for half an hour. Shinso evaded some of Izuku's attacks, but didn't get a single proper punch back. They were just too slow compared to the air blasts and no miss. Eventually he got a single hit on an exhausted Izuku. Okay. That's, Izuku gasped for breath, enough. I need a break, Ida. Your turn. Don't I get a break? Shinso asked with a deadpan expression as he took off his now smoking gloves. How many kilometers have you run today? Izuku asked with a similar expression. Point taken. Just let me get some water first. Izuku moved to sit on a piece of concrete left behind from when whatever building formerly stood there had been demolished. He pulled a thicker jacket out of his backpack to stay warm now that he wasn't constantly on the move. Ida ran literal circles around Shinso, making sudden dashes to slap his shoulder. It helped Ida train his maneuverability with the quick turns, while helping Shinso with his reaction speed and dodging. Feeling the cold January wind even through 2 jackets, Izuku activated one of his blades and let it heat up to keep sweaty clothes under his jackets from freezing. "Hey, you! Stop at once!" someone shouted. Izuku raised his head to see a police officer walk into the lot. "You are not allowed to use quirks like that in public even if it is an empty lot." Ida hit the brakes instantly. The tenseness in his stance was screaming that he was on the brink of bowing and apologizing more than anyone should for using their natural quirks in a harmless way. Izuku extinguished his fire, pulled a folder of papers from his backpack, and got up. "Officer," he called, "the public quirk use ban only applies fully in public spaces. This is a private fenced-off property and subject to limited exceptions as long as quirk use doesn't cause general danger and is permitted by the owner." The officer turned to face Izuku, looking down on him like some random thug or quirkless person beneath his attention. "Are you going to claim you own or have the owner's permission to use this property?" "Yes, the second option. I have here a written permission from the developer that owns this land for me to use this property till the end of February, along with any person I choose to invite here regardless of my presence. It specifically highlights permission to use quirks to the fullest extent the owner can permit. There are also documents containing parts of the police code and precedents by the courts on what is considered permitted quirk use under such conditions." Izuku held his id in one hand and handed the folder to the officer, who grumpily skimmed through the papers. "The last paper contains the contact information of my father's lawyers, in case you need to ask for clarification." The police officer handed the folder back to Izuku, biting his teeth together. His next words were almost a hiss. "You may continue, apologies for the disruption." He walked away. "How does anyone manage to train enough to have a chance at UA with these rules?" Izuku sighed. "Being lucky or rich enough to have good lawyers," Shinso said. "No offense. None taken, I am just glad I could use that to help. We can't get into UA without a place to train." Both Ida and Shinso stared at Izuku, who blinked in response. "What? You said you were going to go to UA," Ida pointed out. "Did I? I didn't mean to. I mean," Izuku stuttered until Shinso grabbed his shoulder. "You can say what you meant if you want or not if you don't want to talk about it. So I don't know where else I should go, so I might as well apply to UA. I got a good feeling there might at least be a couple of people there I like." "That is amazing," Shinso said, so excited his eyes almost didn't look tired. "It would be great going to the same class or even just the same school if I managed to somehow get in. Even with training, there's only so far I can go fighting robots." "You will do fine," Izuku said with no sign of the hesitation he had when talking about himself. "I've actually been thinking about the exam. It is clearly biased towards physical fighting quirks, but I think there might be more. Remember what Principal Nezu said at the fair about it? That was almost 2 months ago. I can't exactly remember everything he said. Never forget the hero's first duty is to rescue. He said that as he was talking about the entrance exam. That never made sense seeing how he supposedly has the exam set up, unless he was hinting that there is something else going on with the entrance exam. The application to UA includes a pretty solid non-disclosure agreement about the content of the exam that wouldn't make sense if it was just fighting robots." "Of course," Ida muttered. "You are right. Even if the hero system has its biases, a school of UA's caliber wouldn't have that narrow entrance exam, I think. A hero's first duty is to rescue. What does that mean for the exam? They vary the details every year. Considering the supposed point system this time, they probably have people there acting like they are in danger or just giving points for helping applicants that get in trouble. Hopefully they aren't counting on just students to keep each other safe. People could easily get killed or maimed beyond even the best quirk healer's abilities. Hopefully my training is enough to help with rescues then, though other quirks still have an advantage." "It has to, unless either of you know someone willing to loan you theirs for the exam," Izuku said. Both Ida and Shinso stared at him again. "Right, your quirk can do that too. I almost forgot since you mostly use the fire," Shinso said. "We can't use quirks most of the time anyway," Izuku said. "There aren't exactly many chances to use my quirk, and it won't help against the robots. You will have your chance eventually with living villains. Both of you can neutralize the most dangerous people without even injuring them," Ida assured. "It doesn't cause any serious side effects to people you use it on, right? Not for taking quirks as far as I know of. I think it may have a temporary effect if the person tries to resist," Izuku responded, watching his words, "but I have noticed getting new quirks can be tough. I wouldn't try to give someone more than one. That would still let someone have 2 or 3 quirks depending how they were born," Shinso said. "That would be life-changing. I can hardly believe you just offered to do something like that for me, even if there really aren't any who would give their quirk for that. Then you have to train harder." Izuku raised his arm and lit a flaming shield. "If I am going to UA, I refuse to do it alone. Izuku barely had the strength to lift his foot over the doorstep as he dragged himself and Shinso into his house, with Shinso being in an even less functional state. At least Ida got all the way back on his own 2 feet. Even the speedster was too tired to walk without dragging his feet. You know Midoriya, Shinso started. I'm starting to suspect you don't want me to go to the USA. Izuku froze and stared at his friend only to witness a devious, though tired, grin. Why else would you try to kill me with training before the entrance exams? Hey, if you survive, the exam will feel like a vacation. If so. Both of them chuckled, Shinso a bit more nervously than Izuku. As all of them were practically dripping sweat, they headed down to the spa, dropping their bags and clothes at the dressing room. There was a whole Japanese bath and a heated pool that was like a hot spring, just what they needed. Izuku spread his arms and unceremoniously fell in the pool. Careful. Even if we're tired, we cannot forget basic pool safety, Ida said in his usual lecturing voice, though even that had lost steam. Still laying on the water, Izuku turned around so he could breathe and respond. My pool, my rules. Shinso chuckled and slid down to the water nearby. He went completely lax as soon as the water reached his neck and there was no need to go anywhere anymore. I won't leave here before tomorrow. I would agree, but we were supposed to have a movie night, Izuku responded. Oh right. I may not have a choice though. I'm not sure I'm even able to get up anymore. Somehow you managed to help me find new muscles to hurt every weekend. Izuku hummed in recognition of Shinso's words, remembering entire school days of pain before regeneration. Now he was just exhausted and recovering faster from that too, but could still sympathize. It is unavoidable, he lied, and settled to a half-sitting position near Shinso. That is how you know the training works. You would know, Shinso poked at Izuku's arm that showed the results from over 8 months of training, several of those without needing to worry about injury or recovery time. I still have a long way to catch up. Izuku jolted at the poke but relaxed again quickly. You have no idea. At least you got this place. I already feel a lot better. Who do I need to brainwash to get a pool like this? Ida opened his mouth to say something, but Izuku was faster and laughed at the comment. Soon Ida too started smiling. Shinso looked at him, and his grin turned into a softer smile. Usually, I can't make jokes like that around people. Maybe I should take their quirks, Izuku said, his expression completely serious. Shinso stared at him and blinked. Izuku returned a smile to his face and continued. I can't make those jokes either. You should have seen your face. Shinso splashed water in Izuku's face. Izuku responded in kind. Soon both were splashing like little kids, like they never got the chance to do enough of before. Surprisingly, Ida didn't reproach them for such childish behavior. Their stamina didn't last long anyway as both remembered how exhausted they were. Izuku leaned back, breathing a bit harder than before, but with a content smile on his face. Glad to see you are enjoying the pool, he told Shinso. I do a lot, though it makes me feel sorrier that I don't have any way to pay back everything you have done. The pool time is the least of it. Honestly, you already have, Izuku said. This house is way too big for me. Usually it just feels empty and cold, hot pool or not, but at times like this I love it. No one ever told me how fun it is to have friends over, mumbling under his breath he muttered, or to have friends at all, for that matter. You haven't had friends before? Ida asked. You didn't realize that before? Izuku asked and turned to look at the ceiling. I haven't had a real friend, at least not anyone my age, since I was 4 or 5. There was this one teacher in my old school who was the closest friend I had. He is the one I could talk to when the bullying got too bad. We still keep in touch. Other than him and family, I've been alone for a decade. That sounds like an excellent teacher, truly worthy of being called sensei, Ida said and paused for a moment before continuing in a more serious tone. How are you feeling now about being lonely, that is? Right now, I can barely remember how it felt, he said with a content smile and tilted his head to look at Shinso. So don't worry about being in trouble and instead go check the mini fridge. He nodded to the small fridge next to the pool. Shinso waddled to it to check the contents. Nice, do you want anything? He asked. Just sparkling water, Izuku said. I'll have the same please, Ida requested politely. We should avoid unhealthy drinks so as to be at our best during the entrance exams. Good idea, Shinso agreed as he came back with drinks and looked at Izuku. Is there anything else you need? You two are in the same school. When people find out about my quirk, I could say the same, Shinso responded. They were all quiet for a moment. I am sure if we continue training this intensely, it will happen. If the exams are worth anything, Izuku said, his smile threatening to slip back to a straight line. His line of thought was cut off as Shinso splashed water on his face again. Once Izuku brushed the water off his eyes, he could see the other's blank expression. We should leave that discussion for training time. Sure, Izuku agreed. Wake me up when you get hungry. Truth to be told, I have felt increasingly hungry for the past hour, Ida said. We shouldn't leave dinner too late. You don't want to eat heavily just before going to sleep. That is probably for the best, Izuku said. I got a personal goal to make Shinso sleep for at least 8 hours. Good luck with that, Shinso muttered. I won't give up until I do it, Izuku promised, determination in his eyes. Don't even think about touching the coffee before morning. They stared for a moment until their self-control failed and both started chuckling. Eventually Izuku pulled himself to the edge of the pool. I'll go order the food. There's a nice sushi place I get food from often. He went back to where he had dropped his clothes. Getting out of the warm pool was not pleasant, but at least the house felt warmer than usual. He dug his phone from his bag, opened one of the several food ordering apps, and ordered a giant sushi collection meant for 10. Smiling, he went back to sit in the pool. It's going to be at least half an hour, probably more. Make sure to wash before then. They finished bathing just in time and were just coming out of the spa area and bathrobes when the food was delivered. Shinso sometimes jolted from sudden pains as he walked, but other than that they were enjoying themselves. Both Ida's and Shinso's jaws dropped as Izuku placed the literal piles of high-quality sushi on the large table. I doubt we can eat all of this, Ida said. At least there isn't a risk of going to bed hungry, Izuku shrugged. You can say that again. I have never seen this much sushi in one place. That must have cost a small fortune. Worth every yen, Izuku declared, smiling, to see your faces. Have to do this again with a camera. Izuku sat down, and despite the size of the table Shinso and Ida picked the seats right next to him. Izuku leaned back on his chair as the two started picking sushi, talking about which were their favorites. Totally worth it, he muttered. Eventually he too started eating, but they all started getting full with almost half of the food still left. Izuku looked at the entire plates of uneaten food. I guess you were right, Ida. We couldn't finish it. I usually only order single portions. Midoriya, I don't want to intrude on your private life, but how much of the food you eat is delivered? A lot, Izuku said. I cook sometimes, but I'm not really good at it. Mom used to make all our food. She loved cooking. I have never found anything as good as her katsudon. Izuku quieted to swallow and held back tears. So, your father doesn't cook for you. You should have noticed by now. He doesn't spend that much time here, usually just quick visits anytime his work permits. Does he have a problem with your quirk too? Shinso asked. What? Izuku spun to face Shinso. No. Dad has been the most supportive person with my quirk, and after the kidnapping attempt, he helped me get past it and control the dragon blade I got then. He never even questioned me for taking it. That's good, Shinso said, and turned to pick one more piece of sushi. Still seems wrong he leaves you to live so alone. All the times we have already been here we have never even seen the man, Ida said. He has done everything he can for me, Izuku said in a barely controlled tone, while recalling the correct lies to say, as much as he hated doing that to these two. Sure he can't stay home much, but that's how we have a home at all, and he gets back whenever he can. Sometimes I go to Tokyo, because he flies all the way back for such a short amount of time it doesn't make sense to come from the airport all the way here. You should understand, Ida. Aren't most people in your family pro-heroes? They are probably busy and have to go with the demands of their jobs first. Some jobs don't fit well with a family. As expected, pointing to Ida's own family stopped the taller teen from responding despite looking like he really wanted to. Izuku turned to face the food, a somber expression on his face. My family situation might not be perfect, but it isn't something you should worry about. My real problems have always come from people outside my family. Look at what you did, Ida. Now he is sad again, Shinso commented. Oh no, I apologize. It was not my intention. I merely wanted to express the same concern for your well-being you regularly show us. Even without looking, Izuku could feel Ida swinging his arm like a robot next to his head. With Ida's words he got some of his smile back. He gestured at the food. How about we carry the rest of this to the living room and start the movie? They didn't make it to the large sofa before Izuku's phone started ringing where they had left their bags after the bath. Wordlessly Shinso took the plate Izuku was carrying so he could go get the phone. He froze, recognizing the caller number as his father. Has something happened? His father knew he was with Shinso and Ida right now. Hesitantly Izuku answered and brought the phone to his ear. He made sure to talk excitedly. Hey, Dad. Izuku held back from wincing as both Ida's and Shinso's heads perked up. Good evening, son. How was your training today? Good, we trained till we could barely walk back. I just finished having dinner with Shinso and Ida. Right. You know, as your father I should know them. If they are there you should let me talk with them. Are you sure? Izuku asked quietly after turning his back to his two guests, not wanting them to hear his concern. Of course. I should be interested in who my son brings home, even if it is not girls yet. That Izuku said, making a good impression of a whiny teenager without even acting. He could hear a small chuckle from his father. Take the phone to them and put me on speaker or you don't get to spend time with Kurogiri for a week. Izuku spun around and headed to the sofa. Guys, my father wants to talk with you. He placed his phone on the table next to their remaining sushi and put it on the speaker. You're on speaker, Izuku said and stepped back from the phone so his hero-hopeful friends could talk with the most prominent villain since Quirks appeared. If he showed any nervousness, he hoped for Shinso, and Ida just thought he was nervous about them talking with his father for the first time. Thank you, Izuku. Good evening, Ida and Shinso, I believe. Yes, sir. I am Tenya Ida. It is an honor to talk with you, Ida said with his usual formality and loudness. I'm Hitachi Shinso, Shinso said in a calmer, more neutral tone, though it was missing some of the tiredness that usually characterized him. Interesting, came from the other end of the line. Even if you did not say your names, I would have known which was which from your voice and how Izuku described you. I'm sure it's because of how detailed descriptions he gave, or maybe he wrote full notebooks on us, Shinso said. Izuku's father laughed at that. You are truly friends of Izuku, and for that you have my gratitude. He has always had a shine of positivity despite the difficulties of his life. I feared he lost it for good with his mother, but it returned brighter than ever as soon as he started talking about you two as his friends. Ida brushed his chin, seemingly deep in thought. I fear I cannot claim the honor for that. I saw what you are talking about after he joined my class, but never could change that even after months. It was only after we met Shinso that I saw him smiling regularly. Do not underestimate your importance. You were willing to stick around for months and try to be his friend even when he wasn't yet ready for it. Their similar experiences might have brought Izuku closer to Shinso faster, but you showed him that he can count on someone of his age at least. For that you are always welcome at my house. Well, I suppose it's Izuku's house mostly, and speaking of Shinso and his quirk. Izuku tensed and stepped closer to his indigo-haired friend, who had also tensed. Your quirk is amazing. So much potential. I wish I could observe it myself, but I would be happy if you could overcome other people's prejudices enough to show Izuku. I'm sure he would come up with even more ways to improve your use of it. Even more? Shinso asked, emphasizing the even part. Izuku turned to face away and after a few seconds walked to his backpack. He pulled out a notebook and returned to the sofa. Shinso and Ida had settled to the ends of the sofa, so Izuku sat in between them with a notebook on his lap. Shinso leaned over to take a closer look. Friend analysis to help them improve part 1, he read out loud. You've really been taking notes about us. Of course he has, his father said from the phone. He is also extremely protective of that notebook specifically. Hasn't even let his own father read it. Every child needs their private treasure, I guess. Dad, Izuku begged as he seemed to shrink into the sofa. Fine. It sounds like everything is fine there. Don't stay up too late, and you two make sure Izuku goes to sleep smiling. We will do our best, sir, Ida declared. Izuku quickly picked up the phone. Good morning, Dad. Sleep well soon. Izuku ended the call and sat in silence for a moment. So, Shinso said, you have a whole notebook on us. Yes, Izuku admitted. It is kind of a habit to take notes on people and their quirks. At first I just made small notes on my regular notebook. Then we started training together and I started taking notes about that and needed more space. Some of the notes are kind of personal, so I haven't shown it to anyone else. Are you going to let us see what you have written? Izuku stared at the notebook for a moment, then held it in front of Shinso. Shinso raised his hand, but hesitated. Take it. It is about you, Izuku said. He dropped the notebook on Shinso's lap and reached for the remote to get the movie night started. Shinso opened the notebook. I didn't think of that, though that doesn't work, Shinso mumbled and skipped to another page. Both Izuku and Ida glanced at him as Izuku tried to remember everything he had written. Is something wrong? Ida asked. Shinso leaned his head from side to side in thought. Nothing we haven't talked about today already. This is basically just a Midoriya is happy to have friends and not hide his quirk page next to the reasons to be friends with each of us. His father wasn't wrong about you. Always there didn't turn on me because of group pressure lectures too much, but only for things I do not how I am. That part is underlined. Should I go on? I don't think that is necessary, Ida responded as Izuku kept sinking into the sofa. Shinso inched to sit a bit closer to Izuku and switched the notebook for the remote. Just as he was about to press play, he turned to stare at Izuku. We are going to talk about how my quirk works tomorrow. Before Izuku could agree, Shinso's focus returned to the screen and he started the movie. A loud orchestral opening started playing from the sound system as text explaining the setup of the movie flowed across space. Sometime later the hero left his destroyed home with an old mentor and arrived in a shady town with soldiers waiting. The mentor simply waved his hand and used his power to control the soldiers' mind, and they were allowed to pass despite having just what the soldiers were searching for. See, brainwashing can be really useful for doing good, Izuku said. Right, Shinso muttered. Did you pick the movie for this? I also like it. It's a classic. So you did, Shinso said, and looked away while holding one hand against the back of his neck. Just saying. I know who I want with me if I ever run into a roadblock, Izuku said, and looked at the screen again. I wonder how it feels to them. To be brainwashed like that, or by your quirk. You know you'll need to use it on me, if you want me to figure out how to properly help you. Maybe, but Shinso muttered, staring at Izuku, stunned, and maybe a little afraid. Are you sure? You'd be at my quirk's mercy. Izuku looked up at his friend. I let you stay overnight in my house with a kitchen full of knives, and will probably fall asleep before you do. I'm not worried that you would abuse your quirk while we are all awake and together. Forget anything anyone else has said about it. You'll never become a hero if you let people like that hold you back. Shinso still hesitated, but Izuku was already subjecting the brainwasher to his pleading friend's eyes, so Shinso had no chance to refuse. Yeah, you're right, Shinso admitted, and drew a deep breath. Do you really want me to brainwash you? Yes, Izuku fell silent mid-sentence. He was still conscious, sort of, but everything was foggy and unclear like his very mind was full of fog. Someone's head leaned in front of him and then something moved back and forth in front of his eyes. People were talking, but he couldn't quite make out the words. Suddenly his hand moved and flicked his forehead with a finger. The world cleared in an instant. Izuku blinked. That, he gasped, was really strange. Sorry, Shinso said, but you. Don't apologize, Izuku intervened. I didn't say it was bad, and yes, I asked for it. The next moment the friend notebook was open and a pen appeared in Izuku's hand. The movie was forgotten, so he started scribbling notes to record the experience while it was still fresh in his mind. Everything else around him hardly existed. For the record, I didn't make him do this, Shinso's voice said somewhere. Don't worry. This happened occasionally before we even met you. Both of them leaned over Izuku to read and see what he was writing, closing Izuku between them as their bodies brushed against him. For someone that most people had either dismissed or avoided aggressively for most of his life, the sensation was new and welcome one. Eventually he stopped writing and they finished watching the movie. We should go to sleep now, so we are sharp tomorrow, Ida declared. Izuku collected the plates, still had some sushi on them, and headed for the kitchen. Ida and Shinso leaned down to open the sofa as a bed. Izuku turned around. You don't need to do that. I've gotten better since last week. Because of course you did, Shinso said, and the two followed Izuku after taking away the plates. He led them upstairs to one of the formerly empty large bedrooms. What had his father even been thinking when he picked the house? It was just too much of nothing with only echoes to keep Izuku company, usually. As he pulled open the door, he was thankful for one more room to fill with 3 more beds, not just beds. But wide high-quality beds arranged with their head ends spreading out from a low triangular table in the middle of it all. Izuku turned around and gestured to the duo to enter. Welcome to the sleepover room. No sofas or floors for my friends. You never cease to surprise me, Shinso said as he stepped in and held the back of his neck in a familiar gesture. So we are all going to sleep in here? If you are okay with it, Izuku responded. You can use my room if you want to be alone. No, I'll be okay, as long as you don't snore. Izuku nodded with a smile on his face and turned to Ida. How about you? Of course I will not refuse your generous effort to make us comfortable and strengthen the bonds of our friendship. Though I have to say your efforts are more than anyone could reasonably expect from you. You should not feel pressured to put such effort into our friendships. True, Shinso said, we aren't your friends to get sushi or a good night's sleep. Well, the latter would be nice if you managed to pull it off. Shinso, Ida remarked, but the indigo-haired teen just shrugged. I'm just telling the truth. Friends shouldn't lie to each other. Izuku froze in place, suddenly feeling terrible. Friends didn't lie to each other, so could Izuku ever be a true friend to them? Tears glinted in his eyes, about to burst out. Both Ida and Shinso stared at him. I swear it's not me, Shinso said. Ida didn't have time to comment as Izuku moved forward between them and brought his arms around them. Oh, they said in unison, misunderstanding Izuku's reaction at least partially. Nevertheless they accepted the gesture. Slowly Izuku's breathing calmed. He stood back and turned away from the two. Sorry. That was embarrassing. I don't know, Shinso said. It was kind of nice. Anyway, we should get ready to sleep, so I can keep my promise to you, Izuku said, still facing away. I won't hesitate to withhold morning coffee if you take too long. Quick footsteps moved to the adjacent bathroom. A few seconds later they came back and Shinso pulled his toothbrush and pajamas from his backpack before leaving again just as fast. Izuku and Ida chuckled. I don't usually support blackmail, but Ida started. It is for a good cause, Izuku finished, still lacking the cheerfulness he should have had. They followed Shinso together to the bathroom and soon got to the beds. Izuku loved going to sleep with fresh clean sheets after bathing. With friends it was infinitely better. He turned off the lights and got onto the last free bed. He turned on his side to face Shinso. Feeling like sleeping yet? No, Shinso sighed. I feel more awake than when we left the bath. Sleeping difficulties are truly a nuisance, Ida commented. My brother often misses sleep, though that is just because of his work. Unfortunately humans cannot simply order themselves to sleep. Izuku's head perked up as Ida's words sank in. Maybe we can, he said. Shinso, can you use your brainwashing to order someone to sleep? Well, maybe. I have not tried to use it like that. It might not since people can't normally choose to fall asleep, but I don't completely understand all of the limits of my quirk. Don't worry, Izuku got back to sitting position. We are going to figure them out starting with this, but for that. Izuku fell silent and looked down, rubbing his hands together. Can I borrow your quirk? What? Shinso and Ida asked at the same time. I understand if you don't want to. I just thought, if it can make people fall asleep I could borrow it and use it on you. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked just that. Do it, Shinso said. Izuku blinked. Are you sure? You trusted me enough to let me in your house and willingly let me brainwash you before. I think I can trust you with my quirk, Shinso said. Full night's sleep would be nice too. Okay, Izuku said and breathed in deep. I have only done this a few times, but it shouldn't hurt. Probably better if you stay relaxed. Izuku reached out with his hand and put it on Shinso's head, amazed as he just laid down relaxed, head on his pillow. He didn't even flinch as Izuku's quirk-taking hand pressed against his head. Izuku focused on his all-for-one, seeking out the quirk within his friend and pulling it away as gently as he could. A moment later he pulled his hand away, feeling the new sensation deep within himself, but ignored it in favor of his friend. How are you feeling? Izuku asked. Strange. I want to say I don't feel anything different, but there is this vague sensation that everything isn't right. Can you respond to me? Of course, Izuku said. Shinso stared at him for a long moment before turning his head to look at the ceiling again. You really took it away. It's strange. For most of my life I wished I could get rid of my quirk. Now I actually feel like I've lost something. Not lost, Izuku assured and brought a hand to his chest. Just loaned to a friend. It is still right here. Want to tell me how to use it? It's simple. You have to focus on the person you want to brainwash while you are talking to them. If you get a response there is this feeling and you only need to pull on it. You have to be quick. The moment only lasts for an instant when the target starts responding. Okay, Izuku responded and focused on Shinso with all the effort his tired brain could muster. Can I make you sleep? Yes, Shinso responded. They were quiet for a moment before he turned his head to look at Izuku again. You missed it. I felt it, but couldn't grasp it in time, Izuku said. Can I try again? Sure. It took many more tries, but then on one try Izuku could feel something snap the instant his mind reached for the strange feeling. Shinso? He asked quietly. There was no response. He reached over and in the dark barely saw Shinso staring at the ceiling with empty eyes. Ida joined Izuku with a stunned look. I have to admit, part of me has always doubted if your quirk could actually do what you said. Not anymore. Izuku didn't respond, having to focus on the brainwashing. Shinso, go to sleep. For a few seconds nothing happened. Then Shinso's eyes closed and his breathing calmed. Neither Izuku or Ida said anything, not wanting to wake up their friend. Izuku placed his hand on Shinso's forehead and returned the quirk before laying back down. He was holding back tears, this time tears of happiness for being able to help someone with his quirk and that someone allowing him to. The only one to ever do that before was his mom. Izuku wiped his eyes on the edge of his blanket, hoping Ida didn't notice. He laid still, the silence of the large house only broken by the calm breathing of people who stayed there with him willingly. Izuku wished he could have told them everything, but had to settle with doing his best to help them pursue their dreams. After a tiring day he soon fell asleep, almost as fast as if he got brainwashed. Izuku stood in the middle of a street alone, his field of view filled by flames and a large green blob of sludge. His mother's head hung out of the sludge, struggling to breathe as the villain squeezed her from outside and inside. There were heroes around. Izuku screamed at them to help, but they only saved people that were nowhere near the villain in the first place. Death Arms tried a single punch just for show, then went to pick up people who were already out of danger, able to just walk away on their own if they wanted, and carried them to a further distance, passing in front of the cameras to be sure they saw him acting heroically. Izuku turned to face the villain and desperately clawed against the sludge to get to his mom, but it was futile. His mom suddenly snapped upwards, and there was a loud crack. The world froze still, literally. Nothing moved except Izuku as he fell on his knees. Then the sludge was gone, and he could really see his mother with All Might standing right on top of him, arm raised as if he had achieved some great victory. Neither he nor the flashing cameras cared about the corpse or her son who was flooding the street. Midoriya. Izuku. Izuku's eyes jolted open. The towering rage-inducing form of All Might was replaced by two concerned faces hovering over Izuku's. His rapid breathing slowly calmed back to normal as the two gave him space without leaving the side of his bed. Izuku brought his hand to his forehead, biting his teeth together. "Don't tell me I had the nightmare and woke you up." "I could, but I already said friends shouldn't lie, so it would be hypocritical," Shinso said. "You were shouting about your mom and telling someone to help her, something about people supposed to be heroes, and you were just about to say something about All Might when Shinso woke you up," Ida added. "I saw her death," Izuku admitted. "I wasn't even there, but I keep getting dreams several times a week witnessing it." "What?" Shinso started, but fell silent as Ida raised his hand and shook his head. He looked at Izuku. "I know your mother's death is a difficult topic and you don't want to talk about it. We won't make you." Izuku lowered his hand and stared at the two. After a long silence he sniffed and reached over his head to get his phone. His hands began shaking as he pulled up the video saved in the phone. The screen was still cracked as a reminder from when he first saw the video. He handed the phone to Ida and pulled a pillow over his face, covering his ears with his hands. He could still hear the muffled sounds of the video and his friends talking. He stayed like that until the pillow, already soaked, was pulled from his face and a dry one was put under his head. Shinso leaned over him. "Izuku," he whispered. "SSH Hitachi." Izuku's thoughts became foggy as the brainwashing took over. "Go back to sleep, Izuku," Hitachi commanded, and there was nothing Izuku could have done to resist, even if he wanted to. At the last second, he realized he had wanted to make Hitachi fall asleep again after waking him up, but it was already too late as sleep took over. At least Hitachi had used his power without needing to be convinced to. Despite the brainwashing, Izuku's lips briefly twitched upwards. Thanks for watching this video. Part 4 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification, and also check out the playlist that I have created and enjoy. Link is in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.